Welcome back to the town square. Glad to be with you on this Monday afternoon, and we've got two special guests in the studio at WJTN. And we have the Reverend Mel McGinnis and Reverend Jeff Short are with us this afternoon, and we're going to be talking about a very special program. Gentlemen, welcome to the town square.
Thank you, John. Good to be here.
It's good to be here.
Glad to have you with us, and it's going to be a great night at the Prendergast Library tomorrow night at 6:30. You're going to be holding a forum at the Prendergast Library, and Reverend Mel, why don't you just tell us a little bit more about that?
The forum will be on this phenomena of new atheism. And people would say, hasn't atheism always been? Yes, but this is a form of atheism that is aggressive, even evangelistic. And you may have heard it through the likes of Richard Dawkins, scientist from England, the late Christopher Hitchens, also a very popular one here in America, Sam Harris. And what we will do is not only show where it is weak, but we'll show why belief in God is reasonable, sound, and necessary for life.
Well, you mentioned the late Christopher Hitchens, and Christopher Hitchens was a noted atheist and liked to proselytize about it. And the one thing that has always stood out for me, you know, there was an individual that used to complain about the Christians having their own holidays, and you know, people of the Jewish faith had their own holidays, and of course Islam has holidays of their own, and there was nothing for atheists, and I had to point out to them that they had April Fool's Day.
Yes, I've heard that one. It kind of goes along with Scripture. The fool says in his heart, there is no God, right there in Psalm 14 and Psalm 53.
So April is always kind of a heyday for atheists, but I think this is a great opportunity for people to come out and maybe get to hear from both Reverend McGinnis and Reverend Short about what their perspective is on the new atheism, and directly compare it.
Yeah, and what we will not do is say, oh, atheists are immoral, or atheists are stupid. Neither will we say that faith is not believing in what you know is not to be true. What you will hear from Jeff and myself is a sound, very reasonable reason why faith in God is essential for the individual in coming up with answers for life's major questions. And those major questions evolve around, where do we come from? Why are we here? What's right and wrong? Where's our destiny? I'm sure Jeff could add a few more things to that as well, but that's kind of a launch pad there.
Well, Jeff, you are an author yourself, and do many forums that revolve around religion, and what is your take on this atheist forum that is set for tomorrow night?
Well, when Mel approached me and asked me to help him out with this at the library, I thought that was a great opportunity. And some people might ask, well, why would there need to be a discussion about atheism? Because it doesn't seem like it's a very big topic, say, around these parts. But if you read the Post-Journal, and if you look at the editorials, and then especially if you go online and you look at the comments in the section there on the editorials, you will find that I would say probably half of the comments are from atheists here in the area. And it seems to be a interesting phenomenon that a lot of the atheists gravitate toward the internet, and they post on message boards, so they don't have to actually be in a public forum, but on the message boards they can get their message across. And so there is a lively and quite large atheist community in these parts based on the comments on the message boards at the Post-Journal. So I thought this is a great opportunity for us to sit down and calmly discuss why we believe that it's most reasonable to believe that God is the author of everything that exists and not just chance.
Well, you, of course, have a daunting task as pastors because the statistics tell us that more and more people are not taking advantage of a church situation in their families and in their everyday life. And what kind of challenges does that represent for a pastor?
Well, I think it challenges a pastor to lead a congregation to believe, number one, there's such a thing as truth. Number two, the Bible is true. And as that is being attacked from a very foundational level, giving people reasons why they believe, what they believe, is essential in this day and age when truth is under assault as it is in this day and age.
Jeff?
Well, that's right. I think the big challenge today for the church and us as pastors, we have a big challenge, is to represent belief in God and represent Christianity in a way that people can understand it. I think most people have already concluded that they understand Christianity, and for a lot of people it doesn't seem relevant to them. And so that's why you get a lot of people. I think most people are not atheists. Obviously, they're not people that disbelieve in God, but you have a lot of practical atheism going around. People who say, well, yeah, I believe in a God out there, I think, somewhere. But then when you look at their lives, it actually looks like they're living as if there is no God. And so our big challenge is not so much directly the outright atheist. Our challenge is to try to get people who are living practical atheism back into firm belief in God based on the reason that with God everything makes sense in the world. If you start with atheism, you come to the conclusion there is no meaning, there is no purpose, there is no right or wrong, ultimately. There is no basis for ethics. It goes downhill fast if you start with atheism. But if you start with God, then you come out with ethics, morality, meaning, purpose, and life just has the fullness that we were meant to live.
Well, we've got a caller. Let's go to the phone and hear from Lenny. Lenny, you're on with Pastor Jeff Short and Pastor Mel McGinnis.
Thank you very much, Lenny. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Lenny. Always good to hear from you.
Yeah, and
You
Lenny,
too.
I think what Lenny's saying is right. I mean, when you look at Scripture, those who are followers of Jesus Christ are all priests. 1 Peter 2:9 says we are a royal priesthood, and that calling there to instruct is definitely part of that priesthood. And something along the lines of teaching in this area, I think, is essential when so many people are being led away in skepticism, doubt, uncertainty. What we're saying, there is something you can be certain about. You can know. You can believe with confidence and assurance. And I think that's so important in our day and time.
Well, the comment you made earlier, Pastor Short, about the ethics and morality is, I think we really have to ask ourselves where young people are establishing their ethical and moral identity, where they're getting that information. And it used to be people talked about kids picking things up on the street corner or the school bus rather than at church or at home or at school where they should be learning those life lessons. And I think it's really gone from bad to worse.
Well, that's one of the main areas that you see atheism working its way out in society, because when you look over the past 50 years, you see a definite decline in a consciousness of God being there. Now, I don't know if you remember back when you were a kid, but when you went to Sunday school and you learned about God, before you were going to do something wrong, you always had that thought in the back of your mind, hey, wait, there's a God, and he sees what I'm doing, and I better be good. Now, we're able, because of our free will, we're able to override that conscience that we have. But kids today who are not learning about God, who are not going to Sunday school, who are not being taught that by their parents, and society, of course, culture, pop culture is not teaching that, they don't have that developed consciousness. And so when they go to do something wrong, a lot of times there isn't any pain of conscience about it. They just go ahead and do it, and that's what we're seeing, and you're right. We see it in the newspapers every day.
No hesitation on their part. And let's go back to the phones, and we have Conan on the line. Conan, you're on with Reverend McGinnis and Reverend Short.
Conan, good to hear your voice. Oh, Conan, you touched on something which is essential to discuss, that aspect of the sense of worth. You get that through a relationship with God. How does that sense of worth develop from an atheistic worldview? An atheist may say, oh, I'm worth something, or you're worth something. The question is not about worth, but how do you get there? Why is it there? Whereas in Christianity, God above, we not only believe it, but we know why we believe it, because it was there from the beginning when we were told we were made in the image of God. That sense of worth is firmly established in Origins. Yeah, Conan, you're right, because we like to talk in areas above that, the politics, but the politics really stem from a philosophy, and that philosophy is grounded in a faith. And I think you touch on something here that when we come to understand who we are as Americans, it goes right back to that basic creed in the Declaration of Independence where we say all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator. Exactly.
Well, the program tomorrow night, Conan, they're going to, in the end, engage in a civil discussion following the presentation, and I think that's an important thing to remember, that there is common ground between people that self-describe themselves as atheists with Christians or Jews or Muslims that happen to also be American citizens. The Constitution, as you adroitly pointed out, that being endowed by your Creator with certain rights is one of the principal parts of that document.
Yeah, and Conan, let's face it, I mean, if we are really looking at things squarely, does the current system of education teach that basic creed that we find in the Declaration?
Homogenization is good in milk, Conan, not necessarily good in kids. Thanks for the call, Conan. We've got to take a quick break, but always good to hear from you. And we'll be right back after these important commercial interruptions. Stick with us on the Town Square. We're talking with Pastor Mel McGinnis and Pastor Jeff Short and about their program tomorrow night at the Prendergast Library at 6:30. We'll be right back.
That guy's pretty good.
Oh,
as far as just monologuing.
Yeah, just love listening to Conan, and he's a frequent caller. And,
yeah, I've heard him on there.
Yeah.
He's got a flair to him,
He does.
when he comments.
He does.
he's got a way with words too. You know, he's able to do that. But he raised some good questions. I was going to jump in there a couple times, but the future of our country in a godless environment. You know, the trend is now to take it in a godless environment, to dispense with religion and God.
Sure.
But that's an unknown future. Because we've got so much embedded in our history that is godly and religious.
That's a very good point. Wow.
Italian American Golf Tournament takes place Thursday, June 6th, Friday, June 7th.
That would be a good topic to jump into. You know, can America exist without God?
And like you say, that aspect of the future, we're delving into areas that we don't have a clue how they will turn out. Do we want to go there? And just leap off that foundation that has been in our nation's history.
And a lot of people are just eager to get off of God and get away from God.
Yeah.
The politicians, and it seems like the government's trying to secularize, strip God and religion out of everything, as if it's a bad thing to have, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't want to be held accountable, and that's the one thing that God does is hold people accountable. They don't like to be held accountable,
Right.
and
Right.
they've always rebelled against it.
Right.
Yeah.
But left to their own devices, atheists usually have a predictable path. You know, people like Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin and others, you know, Mao Zedong.
Yeah.
The results are predictable.
Right. If you want to see a logical outworking of their worldview, I think those are the classic examples.
Well, that's one of the things we're going to talk about tomorrow night is what are the implications of atheism? And a lot of people don't expose that. And, you know, a very dark and depressing philosophy of life. You know, and deeper you get into it, the darker it gets. You don't hear that from the atheists, the new atheists.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point.
If you are 55 or older, you could be at risk for age-related macular degeneration, also known as...
Now, there are some atheists, articulate atheists in the city here. I wonder if any of them are going to call. It would actually be kind of fun if they jumped in there. And
Yeah.
because it's always fun to have someone, you know, presenting their own views.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is one of the criticisms of us at the library. Why don't you have an atheist there?
Welcome back to the town square, and we're having a discussion this afternoon with Reverend Mel McGinnis and Reverend Jeff Short, who are going to have a program tomorrow night at the Pendergast Library at 6:30 p.m. in the fireplace room. And, Veritas First, and tell us about the Veritas First, Reverend Mel.
Veritas means truth, and truth is first. You think about what Christ said. He came to testify to the truth. Christ stood for the truth. Christ is the truth. And when truth has been under assault like it has been, especially through a philosophy like postmodernism, we, as a people who believe in God, must stand for that concept and principles that there are moral absolutes, that there are things always true, and be able to use that as the standard by which to determine that which is right from that which is wrong. So Veritas really makes an emphasis on truth.
Well, Pastor Short, how did you and Reverend Mel decide that a program like this was needed in Jamestown? And you might say that you're holding this in the fireplace room. It's kind of neutral ground. It's not like come and see us at the Lutheran or the Catholic Church. It's kind of neutral ground. And how did you decide to put this program on?
Well, I think it came basically out of the articles that Mel and myself and others write in the Post Journal, and the other people who are active in writing articles and commenting on the message boards. I think a lot of people have been involved in a lot of discussions about this very topic for a long time. Now, that may be a surprise for a lot of people, because if people don't follow the articles in the Post Journals and they follow the comments lines that follow those, you may not realize, but there has been a dialogue going on for a few years now, and Mel has been part of that, and there are some other people who are very articulate on the other side, the atheist side, who press a very strong case. For example, they claim things like Christopher Hitchens used to claim that religion poisons everything. There are people who blame religious belief in God for every evil in society. And we want to get together with those kind of people and believers in a public way and say, let's talk about these things. We have common questions, we have common issues. The questions that were raised before, things like, where did we all come from? Where are we all going? What is the purpose of life? What is their meaning in life? What is the basis for ethics and morality? You know, these common questions everybody has, and these are the things that we could come together and dialogue over. Now, the atheist has a radically different basis for belief in all of those different things. For example, on the question of meaning and purpose, atheism has no answer for ultimate meaning and purpose. If you ask an atheist, what is the ultimate meaning and purpose for human existence, he will say, there is no ultimate meaning for human existence. It just happened. Or he might even say, we're an accident. And so, but the Christian and the believer in God is totally opposite of that. We believe that God had an intention in mind. He planned, he had forethought, and he decided he was going to create human beings. And he made them in his image, or in a similarity to his own being. So we have free will, free choice, we have reason, we have a moral conscience, etc. But an atheist, for example, on the question of ethics, where does an atheist come down? He ultimately has to say there is no basis for ultimate judgment on a right and a wrong. There is no ultimate difference in the grand scheme of things between an Adolf Hitler and a Mother Teresa. If you're consistently atheist, you have to say that the only thing that separates Mother Teresa from Adolf Hitler is a difference of opinion, because there is no ultimate basis for judging right and wrong in an atheistic scheme. But in a Christian belief in God scheme, judgment comes ultimately from God himself. He's the one that sets the right and wrong standards, and so we point to God.
Well, the accidental theory that you're talking about, or as most people know it better, is evolution. You know, we look at the place we are, and what astounds me is when the Bible was written, and our understanding of our place in the universe was far less than it is now with telescopic aids, and actually having been to space in person by the human family, and actually walking on the moon gives you a stark reality of how difficult it is to transcend those distances. But the fact that this Earth rotates around our sun at many thousands of miles an hour, and actually circumvents the sun once a year at 86,000 miles an hour, while spinning through a total vacuum that has no oxygen to support life. But here we sit poised and cushioned in this perfect little envelope that maintains and cradles human life, and to have the audacity to say that all that happened by accident, it never ceases to astound me that people have that opinion.
Well, you're right. You hit on a key point. If you are an atheist, you must believe that it all happened by accident, ultimately. And as a Christian, as a believer in God, we can look at God and say, no, it makes more sense. If you look at our planet, if you look at how everything is perfectly fitted, the right distance from the sun, not too hot, not too cold, just right. Now, is that an accident or is that by design? And I think it's more reasonable to believe that that is by the design of a great and almighty God.
And of course, the systems that keep this planet in stasis, you know, I noticed here on your press release that you're going to be talking about if God is all-powerful, why did he allow the tornado, the recent natural disasters in Oklahoma. But, you know, this world has been replete with natural disasters for the entire existence of human history. And some of those disasters have been used to transmit moral lessons, but more often than not, it's simply where we choose to reside. If you were going to pick a place of having a better chance of having a tornado, you couldn't pick one better than Oklahoma in the United States of America. There's other places in the world where tornadic activity is totally unknown. Well, if you don't want a tornado, all you have to do is live in Europe. They don't have them in Europe, but they have other things that might be equally unpleasant. If you happen to be a tax-paying citizen in Pompeii, Vesuvius might come to your mind. That
Exactly.
There's things that can happen there.
Well, you're talking about human responsibility, and that is true. We do have to look at people's choices as to where they live. The same way on the coast, you know, a tsunami, you're putting yourself at risk there. But Pastor Mel and myself, we had a big discussion about this over at Starbucks Cafe. It's on the YouTube network there, and people can go there and Google or type in Mel McGinnis, and we have a discussion on it. But what that boils down to...
You have an ongoing discussion down at Starbucks?
Well, we had this very discussion about what about the Oklahoma you know, situation there. How does God fit into that? And the ultimate, it ultimately comes down to, do we trust God or do we not trust God? It's kind of like a parent and a child relationship. There's a lot of things the parent does that the child does not understand. And a lot of the problems in childhood is simply the children are not understanding what their parents are doing. Parents can be doing perfectly good and sane and wise things, but kids don't understand. And so they have to trust their parents. And it's the same way with a believer in God. We don't know why God permits some sections of this country to get hit by a hurricane, or why there are floods, and he allows that to happen. But then sometimes he rescues people out of those situations. And so the big mystery is, why this situation does he rescue and why does he not? And again, it boils down to, we have to trust God. Trust that he knows what he's doing, just like the kids have to trust their parents when they don't understand it all the time. So, and now this is one of the topics that a lot of atheists have problems with. And we want to face that directly and not try to brush that off. And we're going to be talking about that at the library too. You know, what about the problem of evil, problem of pain, suffering in the world? How can a good God, who is all-powerful, allow for all this suffering and pain to happen in the world? And so We want to talk about that tomorrow night also, and try to frankly discuss some of the objections that atheists have about belief in God based on this. And we believe that when you dialogue and discuss these things, it becomes clear, more clear. Now, as Christians, we don't claim to understand everything. That would be the last thing we would say, that we understand everything that God permits in this world. But ultimately, it comes down to, for a believer, do we trust in God's overall goodwill, or do we not? And that's basically, everyone has to answer that question for themselves.
Well, but the sheer volume of the resources that God has made available to us on this planet, and the generally relative moderate temperature that is given to us, and if different people like it a little hotter, they can live in the southernmost latitudes, and it's almost like Goldilocks. They can find the part of the planet that's just right for them. And fortunately, the country we live in is just right for a lot of people, and we have over 300 million of us that are presently enjoying life in the United States of America, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And we have a caller. Let's go to Judy on line 2. Judy, you're on with Reverend Mel and Reverend Short. But Pastor McGinnis, you want to give a brief answer to Judy's questions?
Judy, you mentioned reading the Bible as if you don't read every word literally. I agree with you. I read the Bible naturally. And I think reading the Bible naturally helps us to see that in the Bible there are portions of the Bible, poetry, so you read it as poetry. There's historical narrative, so you read it as historical narrative. There's apocalyptic literature, so you read it as apocalyptic literature. That's what I mean by reading the Bible naturally. Logical discourse, that's the way we read it. So I agree with you. I don't read the Bible saying every word is literally true, like in the Song of Solomon, where the woman's hair is described as this luscious goat's hair. I don't picture it as goat's hair, but I read it naturally as to the kind of genre the Bible presents itself, since it's a book of library nature, not just one single kind of literature throughout that book.
It could be literal, though. I think her name was Angora.
Angora.
We do have to take a break for the national and local news, and we'll be right back on the town square. Stick right with us.
Well, another topic related to atheism would be why people are atheists. And we've talked about this before, but very rarely is it intellectual. It's mostly an emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And there are like 3 or 4 different reasons why people are atheists, usually. You know, they've had a bad experience with a church or a pastor or something.
And there's many people who have been hurt. You know,
Hurt by religion. Some people like the attention they
politics
get.
in the church.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's
And
almost
egos
enough
in the
to.
church.
Yeah. And another one is attention getting. You know, when you say you're an atheist, everybody now wants to talk to you, and then there's some people have a really bad rebellious streak. You know, if everybody in the world believes in God, they're not going to believe the opposite. You know?
Yeah.
So there are all kinds of angles there on that.
Interesting to see, just rallies in Washington, the Godless American March, the I think March for Reason, which Dawkins was at, I think, a year ago in March. So there's been this emergence of a kind of aggressive atheism that we haven't seen before.
Yeah. And usually there's a financial component to it, you know.
Yeah.
That's what usually moves people to get out there and evangelize.
Yeah. Yeah.
Controversy, book selling.
Yeah.
A lot of millions of books sold by atheists.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's almost kind of like watching a fire burn a house down too. If you see an atheist and he's blaspheming, have you ever heard one publicly talk about God? It's almost like, oh my goodness, you shouldn't be saying those things, and they really shouldn't be, but it's almost like a novelty. You want to go see it.
Mm.
Yeah.
If you ever hear Hitchens lecture, he's no longer alive, but you see his tapes, and ooh, wow, he's saying things that you just,
Yeah.
you want to, like, sometimes cover your ears.
I think Tim Bryce is going to be coming on the 29th of
Oh, okay.
June. We're trying to put that together.
Yeah.
I've got some things tentatively planned, and I just need to confirm with a couple different people and confirm with him. But they'll be doing a seminar on morality. He wrote a book, Stand Up for Morality.
Mm.
He really talks about the educational component of morality. You know, he's not a pastor or anything, but he's really a business consultant. So
Well, the atheist believes you can have morality without God.
yeah,
Right.
And I think that there's a certain sense of truth to that. You know, I mean, atheists don't have to be immoral.
Yeah,
But
right.
sometimes it just works out that way.
Yeah.
More often than not. That's
I just always, I think the question is not that atheists are moral, but it's like, why are you
Yeah.
moral? Yeah.
There's no logical reason why they should be,
Right.
because if you don't have a lawgiver above you holding you accountable, I guess it's just you're going along with conservative values with no basis for them.
you know.
Yeah. And the foundation has been ripped away as the structure of that foundation is eroding away.
Mm-hmm.
Quite well.
And it really shows up with the kids
Yep.
in schools and the youth. You know, they're actually working out atheism, and they're not sugarcoating it, and they're doing things, crimes that you never thought would ever happen.
Yeah.
And they're just saying, we're taught that we don't have any meaning and purpose in life.
No, and that's disturbing in itself. You know, probably one of the biggest eye openers people had here was a couple of weeks ago when they hacked that soldier's head off with a cleaver
Yeah.
on the street in London.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they can get that carried away in the name of religion. Say
Yeah.
nothing about someone who doesn't have any religious guidance. So
Yeah.
it,
Oh yeah, I mean, that's another point that atheists bring up. That and we would probably make the same thing, is that religion in general is not what we would be advocating, right? I mean, religion is a big can of worms. We would be